So today I'm here to talk about AOC's recent excavations at a fantastic industrial site in Leith. In 2024, we conducted an excavation at Constitution and Baltic Street over the former Edinburgh and Leith gasworks. This followed a programme of historic building, recording and evaluation works, and it was all ahead of new student accommodation and commercial spaces. In the 18th century, the proposed development site was a vacant area of land, although Leith by this time had started to become an industrialised zone, centred around its harbour, which was originally adjacent to the north of the site at Tower Street. On Wood's 1777 map, it shows that the site was an open area of land with a small building to the southwest corner, and to the east of the site is the Edinburgh Glassworks, which was established in the mid-18th century, and AOC dug a few years prior. And to the west, a large timber yard and marble yard. The shore at this time was located directly to the north of the site in the position of present Tower Street. By the early 19th century, the 1807 post office map here reveals that the site has now been developed into a naval yard along numbers 7 to 35 Constitution Street, with a linear length of building along the east and west side of the proposed development area and the entrance to the centre of the West Range. The building turns in the corner at Baltic Street at the west side, and there's another range of buildings at the centre of the plot there. Thompson's later 1822 map gives us the site in greater detail, showing the extended naval yard to the west and two linear buildings to the smaller detached building to the east. And here we see the owners' names of the Reverend H. Gray, John Crawford, and Alexander Sheriff. From around 1835, the buildings across the whole of the development area were swept away to make way for the Edinburgh and Leith gasworks. It's really annoying having glass and gasworks right beside each other, especially when you're a mumbler like me. And depicted on the 1853 Ordnance Survey map. The Leith Gaslight Company was formed in 1823 and by 1829 owned the eastern portion of the site at Baltic Street. They later purchased land to the west to use as a coal yard from a Mr. Crawford, and the map shows the main coal depot was located to the west of the site at Constitution Street, with a number of sidings feeding the coal sheds into the main railway line, and they've been built to the north of the site. In the centre, we have the gasometer house, with another smaller gasometer house to the centre there. Other buildings noted in the complex are the meter house, lime house, purifying house and condensers all along the north of the site, with a smithy and a wrights workshop to the south and the manager's house located to the Baltic Street end. The Rendell and Robertson's map shows that the Corn Exchange has now been built in 1861 to the southwest of the plot, and consolidation of the coal shed buildings on Constitution Street, with the remainder of the gaswork buildings at Baltic Street appearing to have largely remained the same. Then by 1876, the buildings have now expanded, and most notably there's the addition of new retort houses in the centre of the site, and a chimney now depicted at the south of the site at Baltic Street. Then to the west of the site later on we get the Lothian coal yard, and more offices, a flour mill, and to the northwest corner we have Bruce Boyd and coal granaries. Then the site largely remains the same for several years, maintaining the same layout, with one thing to note that between 1914 and 1933 the sidings of the central east yard of the gasworks has been removed, and then by I've got clicks here, I'll put them in the wrong place. So by 1949, the Ordnance Survey shows that the buildings to the east of the site have now been converted for use as a sawmill. And now 1971. It's changed little again, with the mill and timber yard still present on Salamander Street and whatnot. Largely before these buildings were demolished at this point in time, the artist formerly known as the Royal Commission came in and did a survey. And this was before they reduced the height of the gasometer house, and this is largely what I based my excavation plan on during the time. And little did I know that it would absolutely be completely useless. So, the excavation started off on this side between July and October 24, monitoring stripping and eventual removal of any of the buildings uncovered. The first phase, and unsurprisingly the earliest phase of the site, was concentrated to the northwest. We had the scant remains of 19th century naval yard, and it was mostly infilled with demolition and old scrap material. So, a wall of unbonded dry stone boulders set at an approximate 45-degree slope was revealed to the north, creating what has been interpreted as a sea breaker wall, probably just as Tower Street and beyond was starting to be reclaimed. The seawall comprised of the stacked boulders with a fourth propped up against the end there. It was filled with deposits of loose mid-grey sands, with really disappointing finds, kind of unsurprisingly due to being constantly eroded by the sea. But we did get a selection of clay tobacco pipe stems, but also modern ceramics. As I say, you can see just in the corner there, it's been infilled with type 1, so it's been clearly affected at some point during all the demolition works from the 70s. Immediately behind there was the two walls on a same orientation, one comprised of 6 plinths of tapering sandstone blocks with segments of wall, while the other was rough cut sandstone, in a lightly formed part of this naval yard. To the south again, we had further buildings, more than likely also associated with the naval yard. These features were part of that land reclamation and building up of the Navy, the naval yard, which at this point was a separate entity to the Admiralty. During the 18th century, the yard was used by the Navy Board to supply naval vessels, and these were likely part of the granary buildings that once situated along the Constitution Street frontage. Further evidence was provided in the presence of the Navy Board crest, which was on the keystone of the wall that used to surround Constitution Street. At this time, the Navy Board operated as a separate but connected entity to the Admiralty. The victualling yard was set up to be a supply hub of goods to keep the Navy in operation. Important stuffs, mostly beer, were stored here and eventually moved to be closer to the quayside, to the new wet docks at Commercial Street in 1829. The old yard was then let out and then sold to the gas board. So the Phase 2 area here was concentrated in an open yard areas of the site. And unfortunately, at this point, you're all going to have to learn about the gas making process for any of this to make sense. So, retors, this section here. Gas was produced by heating coal in a closed tubular vessel known as a retor. These were airtight cylinders that held coal. The heat was sealed, and the sealed nature of the retort forced gases out of the coal, which left behind the byproduct of coke. This was often then used in the furnaces to heat the retorts. So, the retort furnaces were uncovered to the southern portion of the site. This was recorded during the 1970 survey and has been part of the retort houses. 2 brickwork furnaces recorded, initially thought to be separate features. However, upon removal, it is likely that they represented a truncated remains of the same furnace system. The entire structure was 22.5 by 5.5, roughly, with channels that were constructed in pairs along the surface of the structure, which were interpreted as the flue extracts for excess tar and coke during the firing. Upon removal, though, it was revealed that the flue system went for a further metre down, and the central system likely led to the chimney that faced onto Baltic Street. This is an example of what the retorts generally looked like when working. Unfortunately, I've not been able to find anything from Baltic Street yet, but hopefully archival research should reveal something. But there's from the bigger gasworks, which I visited just towards the end of the project, so I actually knew what I was talking about. It's quite a nice visit as well. So I've mentioned coal a few times. It was an important part of the gas process, and one of my favourite little bits from the infrastructure of the site was this little turntable base. It was approximately 4 metres in diameter, and the internal mechanism was visible. The turntable would have formed part of the coal cart system, as depicted on a lot of the 19th century mapping, leading from the coal yard to the rear and to the north, sorry, and throughout. The coal would have come in via the South Leith goods station and coal depot to the north, and moved around via that. So next, condensing and purifying the gas. The heated coal gave off a mixture of hydrogen, methane and carbon monoxide, and was passed through a condenser. This cooled the gas and allowed volatile inclusions such as tar to be siphoned off and collected. The condenser would typically have been air-cooled with above-ground pipework. This survived on the site as a series of concrete bases, which are fairly unexciting to look at, but there you go. They were approximately 3 metres and... that makes no sense. There was a brickwork arch that used to cover this tar well here, which was an absolutely horrendous thing. It took me a while to work out what it would have been, but don't know how since it was completely black. Then, after the cooling process, the gas would have been passed through a washer, scrubber and purifier with water, lime and iron oxide to remove further impurities from the gas. The main purifying house is still extant now and is being reutilised as part of the redevelopment works. But much of this was just concrete bases that was found on the surface anyway. Then finally, storage, something most people will be a bit more familiar with, even if you don't realise it. A gas holder, sometimes referred to as the gasometer, was a large telescopic tank with water and gas pumped up as the tanks rose. This was supported by a large metal frame, and we typically see one today in certain cities still surviving, such as the Granton one. Gas holder F, one of the last ones excavated, but one of the earliest on the site, separated from the main gasometer house and comprised of 3 concentric rings of faced lime mortared sandstone with a central circular base. It was about 13 metres in diameter with a height of about 1 metre. Each wall had sandstone footing, and there was 3 narrow channels between it, presumably to hold some of the ironwork functioning. To the northwest, there was an ancillary rectangular chamber, which I've still no clue what that was for. And the entirety of the ring had been filled with coal and coke waste. So that was a painstaking excavation with a small machine to try and get it to look as pretty as that. On the surface, there was at least 11 pedestals noted along gas holder F in the excavation area, and was clearly one of the first signs of proper remodifications that was happening throughout the lifespan of the gasworks. Mapping shows this was part of the conversion into a coal store. And then after this, it was delivered into the houses and to lamp the streetlights and finally make it a bit safer. But then we had the main gasometer house, which sounds like it's going to be really boring. You're just going to see a bunch of circular bases, and it's not too far off, but there's a little bit of a change to it as well. And this is where the 70s plan goes like mostly out the window. So yeah, this was supposed to be big gas storage area. Just in case you forgot what I'm talking about. It's mostly because I just want to keep having that animation going. I've quite enjoyed playing with that. So, unsurprisingly, we start off with gas holder A, which is situated within the northernmost room located within the gasometer house. The room itself was 19 by 17 metres. Each gas holder at this point was about 19 metres across at least, and it was bonded to the foundations of the main building surrounding it. The base was made with 3 layers of concentrically laid sandstone blocks with a total depth of about 0.7 metres. It's unclear how much of the original gas holder this represents, but we can clearly see later remodifications in the form of those sandstone blocks within the centre. And interestingly, it seems like they've made these blocks out of where the truncations are through the centre of the gas holder base. It seems like they've just reused that, taken it up and made new pillar bases to support further roof space. This is a really boring one, unfortunately. So this was the first one excavated and similar in construction, though looks more or less complete on the surface. However, there was not much else going on in this room. Then we've got what should have been gas holder C, according to the 1970s plan. But rather than the concentrically laid slabs, we had individual slabs laid down into the circular pattern with additional walls and a surprising well within the centre of it. Because we done this before the purifying house, I had not a clue what this well was about. However, it later became clear that this must have been a tar well, and was occurring through a rapid period of remodelling of the entire structures within the centre of the gas holder building. And then again, what should have been more gas holders turned into be something completely different, and a real headache for the developers who really wanted to rattle through this. So this was second to last within the Gaslight house, and based on the 77 survey, should have been more gas holders. However, this really impressive looking yellow brick structure occurred and was filled with about 1.2 metre of yellow fire brick. The central structure of the room was constructed with yellow fire bricks. This had been truncated by the modern drainage pipe, as well as obviously being basically cowed in on itself. The structure measured nearly 22 by 6 metres at its full, and it was constructed in distinct segments, almost like a flat pack furnace, where you could just keep adding on to it. The central columns were situated between each structure and created a pair of chambers that have been interpreted as part of the flue system. And associated with each pairing, there was a darkened shadow that was likely where the furnace would have sat. You can kind of just see it to the very top of the frame, where there's a sort of lighter circle with a dark one in the middle, like a wee bullseye. During the removal, it was revealed that there was 12 blocked flues appeared to lead to a centralised chimney system that would appear to have led to another centralised flue. Presumably this would have been the chimney that fronted Baltic Street again. However, the exterior portion was completely truncated by modern disturbance, so we'll not really be able to gain much more from that. And finally, the last two gas holders, again, based on the 77 survey, should have still been there. However, more remodelling had happened where they've reused the bases. Again, these ones were slightly smaller, only about 13.5 metres, and with depths of around 1 metre of well-faced sandstone. And as with the previous areas, as I say, it's been clear that there's been substantial remodification to the building, with internal walls sat on, poorly bonded and sat on top of the flooring. So this is part of my phasing of the site, based on the mapping evidence and what I could see based on the excavations. A lot of work went into that, with the earliest phase being the Tower Street reclamation, then moving on to the Navy Board and beyond. And then my colleague showed me this map that shows the Goads insurance map. That shows it exactly as it was in 1892 and matches up to absolutely everything that I encountered in terms of the remodelling, what everything was. Basically, all my interpretations on the ground that made me look absolutely fantastic was kind of like underscored by this. So what can you do? But it shows you should read your colleagues' reports better than you do. So yeah, this basically shows that the gasworks went through a rapid period of remodelling. About every 20 years. They had to up the gas production because they just could not keep up, which eventually led to the Granton Gasworks being opened in 1901. As you can see, there's no need to even store gas at this point. They were producing it and it was getting pumped straight out into the city and beyond. So yeah, that was exciting and disappointing, that one. But yeah, so at this point, they were talking about expanding Baltic Street. However, they decided that this is when the gas production was moving to municipal periods, municipal boards, that they wanted a big brand new area so that they could expand and utilise new technology. And for comparison, my biggest gas holder here was 19 metres. The Granton gas holder one is 76 metres in diameter. So they were clearly upping production to a massive scale. And at this final stage at Granton, I think there was 17 gas holders in total. So it was really trying to keep up with the East Coast. So just before I finish up, I'm just going to talk about some of our outreach that happened through the project. It was a great opportunity to get local people involved, since it was a particularly visible site. We had 2 open days, we had a social media campaign, and there's boards going up around the site. And in total, we had 155 people come and visit with positive feedback, thankfully. And as I say, it just gave a chance for people to come and understand what we were doing and what was happening in the local area. And as we're now wrapping up our post-excavation works, we'll hopefully continue to do more. So yeah, thank you for listening. I'm going to do a quick shameless plug. We dug the New Street Gasworks, and we have a fantastic page on our in-house in situ page. So if you search for those, you'll see a great work which shows you through all the phases of the other big gasworks that was in Edinburgh at that time. So yeah, thank you very much.